The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey folks, can everyone hear me? Just answer in chat if you can. All right, good stuff. Going to give it a couple more minutes for people to show up. Some more people signed into this, and we'll get started. All right, so more folks are just showing up. I'm going to give it just a minute more for people to show up because there's quite a few people signed up for it, and I just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to get in before it starts. So just hold on 1 minute. Okay, so I'm going to get things started, and people can show up as they wish. So my name's Adam Silver. I'm a support engineer here at Metalogix in our archive manager team. Some of you look like familiar faces or familiar words, as it were. If you haven't done one of our 30-minute quick takes, the format for this is we try to get around 15 minutes of content and training in there, and we try to get a 15-minute QA session around that, however long it takes. Today we're going to be doing a very simple overview of HSM handling, and by HSM handling we mean specifically creating a new HSM store to start moving archiving to, or to move your current store from one place to another and reset it there. Really common situation with Archive Manager, of course. Your HSM grows too large for the original storage space you put it in. You need to either make a new one and keep the old one running, or move the entire current one over to a new, bigger storage space. And we want to go over that with you. So I'm just going to go to my next slide here. And so the basic steps, we're going to start with proper preparation, best practice for HSM store copying, and how to reattach the HSM store once you moved it from place to place. Now, proper preparation, it's a file level issue because you've got your HSM store and it's all files. It's not a difficult situation. However, because the HSM is made up of thousands, sometimes millions of tiny little files, you can imagine Windows has a lot of fun trying to copy all this. So it makes a 100 gig copy that would otherwise take something like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It can take hours. It can take a day to move that many files individually from place to place. So we often encourage, and people do tend to use third-party copying programs like Xcopy or even RoboCopy to move it back and forth just in case something goes on while it's doing the copy. And because the copy of the HSM from place to place takes so long, it's important to get this done well ahead of time before you want to. Now, obviously, you're making a copy of the HSM, so while it's copying, you don't want it to be able to, you don't want anything being added to it, so you want to shut down your archive jobs. And actually, while we're talking about this, I'm just going to go over the first two first, basically the moving of the entire HSM store. I'm going to switch over to my test server so we can take a look what that looks like. So in here, you've got your enterprise manager. We're going to open it up, and before you copy the HSM store, as I said, you want things to not be adding to it. You don't want the system to be archiving to it. It's fine that people are retrieving files from it. It's not going to be changing, but we don't want anything to be added in. So the first thing, of course, we'd want to do is go over to our jobs and stop them. I've already got them stopped on this server, but typically you'll have them in scheduled mode, and you want to go in and make sure those are stopped, both the sync job and the regular one. Sync job doesn't matter that much, just the regular archiving jobs you want stopped. By the way, if you've got specific questions, try to hold off till the end of the 15 minutes, and we'll go over all the questions you've got over here. So, but if there's something really important you want to stop on, throw it into the question, into the little question field, and I'll see what I can do while I'm running this. So jobs are stopped, so nothing can move in. If you want to be sure that the jobs aren't running, and some people have a lot of different jobs and it can be fairly confusing, you can actually go into services, and without affecting the rest of the system, the direct archive service here, which is in charge of the actual core archiving, you can stop that service. And once you do that, it can't archive. Everything else you can still retrieve, people can still get at it, but nothing can be added to the HSM. Let's flip that back on. Okay. So our HSM is stopped. Nothing is being added. We go to where our core HSM is on this server. It's a very simple server again. The HSM folder is right here on the desktop. If you're not sure where your HSM is, you can find that out in the configuration tool over here, and we're just spending a lot of time here. In the HSM tab, you'll be able to click on stores, and you'll find your HSM store here. There are a couple different kinds of stores. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later, but the most important thing is that you could just click in here and hit manage, and you'll be able to go in, choose your store if you've got multiples, and see where it is. Now, that's the path to the media store. Very simple. This is where it is on the drive. So we'll come back to here. Right now, we go down to the path. We know where it is. We've got our HSM. We can copy this entire directory. And we got to make sure we want to copy it, not move it, because you may have people out there actively accessing the HSM and retrieving archived files. If you make a copy of it, and again, I'm going to do it very simply here in Windows, but you might want to consider doing a robocopy or an Xcopy or a third-party copying program to do it. You're going to want to take it well ahead of time, because it does take a long time, and you're going to want to put it over, I've got a new drive here, over here, and make sure you copy paste. That way you're not interrupting anyone's retrieval of archived mail. It's copying in the background, and nobody's the worse for it. Okay, so again, want to stress that this move was very simple because I've only got very few archived files in the Hsm store. For you guys that are out there who have thousands and hundreds of thousands of mail in there, do this the week before you want to actually do the move, because it's going to take a long time to copy the Hsm from one place to another. Okay, so back in our configuration, we've now moved the Hsm over here, and we want actually this store to now link over to this new storage area. So what we're going to do is exactly what we did before. We're going to pick the store we want. We're going to click on Manage, and we are going to make sure we've got the store we want. Hit Next. And there is that path. So we don't want to see Hsm. That's the old location. So I'm going to hit Browse, go down to our new location in our E drive, and click in there. Just right at the root. Switches to E. I mean, you could just type E too. You could just have the path there. And yeah, you're set up. If you do allow multiple savings, which I don't know who uses it. Some people use it, some people don't. What it does is just for every single file that's saved to the Hsm, it also saves it to the second location, so you have like a dual backup of the Hsm running all the time. You can either leave that or change it. It's up to you. It will still keep drawing to whatever path you put in. It'll automatically start going. Same deal. It just changed the path, changed the location, put it in. So I'm just going to click through this. We don't have to worry about these features. Don't mark it read-only. You don't need to recreate the media store. I wouldn't mess around with the speed unless it's something that we're specifically getting into. It's optimized the way it stands. It's going to ask you to restart the store. So very simple in terms of restarting that, in terms of moving the Hsm and copying it. It's just the process of shutting down your jobs, making sure nothing's archiving to it, moving the Hsm folder over to wherever you want it to be in the new location, and going in, setting the settings, and telling it where the new path is, running through, boom, turn your jobs back on. It'll continue archiving like nothing's happened. So that one's easy. The only things you run into there specifically are the preparation issues, where you've got to make sure you're not X-copying, or you're doing a huge copy beforehand. You know that. Okay, so creating a new Hsm store. This one is a little bit trickier. And we're going to talk a little bit about Hsm store types and schemas as well. We'll just pop back to my server. All right. So let's say we want to create a new Hsm store, and we want to create it on this new storage drive we're doing. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that the old Hsm store is exactly where it is and it's not shut down. We're not going to touch the old Hsm store because it still has data in it from previously archived mail, and if people try to retrieve it and you move completely to the new one without actually moving the old data, they're not going to be able to retrieve any of the old data. So the old store has to stay in this situation. We're making a new one. It won't grow anymore, but it'll still be in place. So first step, obviously we're going to create a new store. Now, it's going to ask what the difference is. It's going to have all these different connectors for different types of storage types. By default, typically, the two we see most are, let me just find it, the jukebox hard disk network share. We also call that a media store. That's sort of the old version of the archive Hsm store that we see a lot in some of the older versions, especially the Sunbelt versions. We'll explain why later. And the newer kind of one that we like using is Simple Path. It's Simple Path because it's a lot more, it's a lot easier to manage. It doesn't require certain things. Like, it doesn't require to be running, have a running or stop state like some of the other ones do. So we'll call this HSM2. This is going to be our new one. And again, we're going to find our path, but this time we want a new path, right? So our old HSM is there. We're going to just make a new folder. We call it HSM2. And that's where we're going to connect into. And I'm not going to worry about all the relative savings or multiple savings. We're going to continue through the settings, leave them as they are. Finish it up. It's going to restart the base operations store again. And once that's done, we've got our new Hsm store. Of course, we've got nothing in it. We've got the folder in place, and nothing is moving to it yet. So what we want to do from this point is we need a new schema to attach to that Hsm store. And the schema is what the retention policy is going to read, what path it's going to follow into which Hsm store it's using. So we want to create a new schema in here, and we'll just call it new schema. And we'll just hit OK. We won't worry about any of these settings right now. It's a little more outside the scope of this. So I'm just going to run this, restart the service again. We've got our new schema. And I guess I glazed over it really quick. We've got to make sure, and I actually didn't do it properly, when we create this new schema, the difference with the schema is right here in store. We want to make sure it's connected to the new store, not the old one. So you'll have an option up there. Old one's connected to this guy. This new one's going to be connected to this new Hsm we just built. Let's hit OK. OK, so we've got our new Hsm, our new schema. The next step we need to make, and the only step we have left to actually have the system start archiving onto this guy, is we need to go actually into Enterprise Manager. And in Enterprise Manager, we're going to go into the archive over here. Oh, sorry, not archive. We're going to retention. Because the retention categories that you have here, if you look at them, are still on the old schema, not new schema. So you'll notice that it actually hasn't let me, it's not showing up new schema. This does happen sometimes, and it's a situation where we need to restart the services. And so let me do that for us here. I'm going to just restart all this archive services with our handy batch file that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And while that's restarting, I should mention that all the preparation, other than the copying, the preparation steps apply to creating a new store that apply to relocating the store. You should make sure you shut down your archiving while it's happening, obviously. Leave the old services up and just make sure people can retrieve, and shut down the direct archive service if you want to be sure. So that nothing go into the old one while you're building out the new one. Get that started. And specifically the manager service that needs to start to recognize the new schema at times. Okay, so I'm going to launch up Enterprise Manager again. We'll take a look at the retentions. So under retention, we've got our default and test. These are the two that are in our test system. We're going to double click it. We're going to open this and take a look. Now we've got the new schema here. So really, in this retention category, what we're looking at is this is the old Hsm server, or old Hsm folder. This is the new Hsm folder. So we want to transfer all archiving over to the new one. We're going to click these and make sure the retention is changed to reflect that. Now what we'll be able to do is my server comes back to life here. There we go. So now we've got the new schema in place over here, the default test. We can restart all the pieces. I think I left the direct archive service running. I did, so that's fine. Because I wasn't archiving anything. My jobs were stopped. So I'm just going to go in and go take a look at the actual email. We'll just make sure it's actually archiving through that, specifically that retention policy. Remember, I only changed one retention policy. If I archive under the test retention policy, it will still go through the old server. So I changed the default in this case. And there it goes. And if we look down in our folder where we created our new Hsm, we'll see that it's auto-created all these folders, and that archive mail that I've just made is right there. So at this point, everything under that retention category, and you should make sure it's on all the retention categories you want to archive to, have switched over, and it is archiving to the new piece. I think that pretty much covers the basics. I know it's a scramble to get this stuff in our 15-minute period, but I'm going to take a look at the questions now. I see you guys have some. Just going to take a look. Start at the bottom. If we have a network store, according to a UNC path left over from Sunbelt, can it be converted to a simple type? No, unfortunately, the types are independent. If you've got a media store that's set up that way, you've got to create a new store to create a new simple path store. And that's one thing I wanted to point out as well. I'm just going to flip back to my slideshow. And there was a couple of other things I had on there. One of them pertained to that directly. The simple store versus the media store, and these are the two most common stores, and that's why I've got them in there. They're not for any sort of third-party storage app. The simple store organizes things very simply. It's just 2014 August, and this is the hour when it was done. There's no storage limit for each folder, and it doesn't have that running and stop state that sometimes people get run into, because the running and stop state is independent from the service. Often the service will be stopped, or the Hsm store will be stopped, and they'll stop people up. The media store, the real advantage to the media store comes from earlier back in the day, where the folder sizes were limited to 4.7 gigabytes, so you could store each one on a DVD backup. And for FAT32 file systems that only allow specific, like, smaller folder items, it's good for that. But typically now it's not used so much because storage isn't at such a premium, and it's not such a huge deal that things be able to fit on a DVD. So I'm going to go back to that in a second. I'm just going to check the next question. So it was a network store. And next question, when we're retrieving archived items, it looks in all stores no matter where the content is created. It's by Gina. No, that's not true. As I was saying, when you create a new store, rather than transferring your entire store from place to place, you have to leave the old store in place and running, because the old store contains all that information. So you would have to have the new store where things are archiving to, and you would have to keep the old store alive. You can move that piece somewhere else, but you have to keep it alive as well, because both contain the data. When somebody does a retrieve on an archived item, it looks into SQL to figure out what Hsm store it's in, and then routes it to that Hsm store. If it's not active, they'll get an error when they try to retrieve. Okay, the largest Hsm you can you have for starting another? The largest Hsm can you have for starting another? That's from Stephen. I'm not sure exactly with the phrasing of the question, but you can have any size Hsm and start another. I just started these ones, and it's it's only a couple of megs in this case, because I've got a few archived on this test server. So a Hsm store size is irrelevant. As we were talking about, the media store will store multiple folders. Every time it hits that 5 gig limit, it'll start a new folder, whereas the simple store will only start a new folder when it hits the next month, year, month, or hour. But it doesn't really matter on the file level how big your Hsm is. Typically, people want a new store because they're running out of storage space, not because of any sort of limit inherent in the system. Okay, async moving. Okay, that's a really good question, Darren. It is outside the scope of this, and async moving is quite complicated and something that's done at the lead level. And what it is the system has an asynchronous task system that you can build that will allow you to move and alter Hsm stores on a schedule and on a regular basis. Again, outside the scope, that's something you're going to want to send a case in about if you've got questions about async. It's something that's typically done at the higher level, at the lead level, because it can cause some actual trouble with the Hsm. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about online moving and stuff like that. Okay, Gina. While they were alive, it looked all stores. I think I've already hit that one. Yes. Well, no, Gina. While they're alive, as long as each store is started, they will look where the individual data is. So when you double-click on an archived mail to retrieve one, it will go to SQL, and SQL has a marker that says which Hsm store is this in, and it'll follow that path to the Hsm store it's in. If the old Hsm store is shut down, all of that old data will be inaccessible, whereas all the archive stuff that's been archived on the new Hsm will be accessible. So both stores have to be up to be able to access everything. If one store is down when somebody does a retrieval for a file that's archived in that store, it'll fail. Okay. Can you create HSM on another server UNC path? Absolutely. HSM can be anywhere on the network. Not an issue at all. In fact, in quite a lot of cases, the HSM has moved onto a SAN or onto another network device. I'm going to flip back to the server for a sec for answer to that question. There is, in configuration, when you create a new store, there's a whole series of types of connectors for third-party storage devices. Now, they're typically uncommon, but if you do have a very specialized situation, you should let us know, and we can always see if we can build one of these connectors in to help you out with that. So that works as well. And let's see, the question. When you stop the service that allows jobs to be archived, does it also stop users from manually archiving through the option? Yeah, so that's from Dave Galbo. I'm assuming you're meaning in the add-in, the Outlook add-in. Yes, absolutely. Once the direct archive service is stopped, nothing can archive on that archive server. It's the direct archives job that's responsible for going through that job reporting pool in the system and actually doing the archiving. So once the direct archive stopped, they can't do anything. All right. We're looking to create a store in cloud using Amazon S3. Yeah, so that is a bit of a specialized situation, but we have done it quite a bit, Gina. So specifically, if you're creating a store on Amazon S3, just open the case for it and come in with us, and we'll give you specific instructions on how to do that. As far as the archiver is concerned, it looks the same. It's just a matter of how the HSM store is set up and what connectors are used to properly get it hooked in. Okay. Anyone else? I'm out of questions for now. I want to hear some more. Anyone out there? Okay. Well, since we don't have any questions, there was one more piece I wanted to go over. That was just basic troubleshooting for the HSM. Hsm Store services, I'm going to backtrack on this slide a little bit. The MAMX handler service is specifically the service that links to the HSM. It is the one that most often, if you go in and try to archive something or try to retrieve something and see an HSM error, is down for some reason. We've seen Microsoft updates stop it. We've seen several other things to stop that service. If your HSM is down and you're seeing HSM errors, it should be the go-to. So go onto the archive server, open up services, and check that MAMX handler service and see if that is actually working or not, because if it's shut down, nothing can reach your HSM. You can't archive, restore, retrieve. You can't do any of it. The second start is store start to stop for media type stores. And this is going to be actually a hard one to demonstrate because I don't have any media type stores on the server. But let me see if I can demonstrate it since we have a little bit of time here. I don't think I have any more questions unless Gina dropped another one in quick. You need to create a new schema for each store. Yes, you do. It's important to have a new schema for each store because that's what's going to allow you to route in the retention categories which store you want to go to. So I'm just going to create a third store here really quick. And this time, I'm going to make a media store. So that's down the jukebox hard disk here. And we're going to make a new media store path. HSM3. Oops. And just next to this, try to get it quickly done so I can show you one more piece. Right. Make sure it's on this server. Localhost. You see the media store requires a lot more setting up, and it requires a lot more setting up for reasons that are since not as useful as they used to be. So I'm going to make a new schema for that called new schema 2. I'm going to make sure I go to the new store, HSM3. Okay. And so now we've got our new store, and you'll notice over here that it has a state. So a media store, and a lot of you guys will have these media stores because you're coming from old versions of the archive, or you're coming from way back and you've been using the archive for a long time. This is the second thing that trips people up, because whether or not that MAMX handler service is starting, that guy's running right there, this can be either in a start or stop state. So if you see your Hsm isn't working properly, you're getting Hsm errors, one of the things you need to do is click on this little arrow next to manage. You'll get a manage service state. And you'll see that the two simple paths don't have a service state, but this media store does, and you can stop and start that. So often you'll find it in the stop state after a Windows update or something like that. Your Hsm goes down, and you'll need to come in here, click on start, and make sure that it's running. Another quick note is that this doesn't auto update, so if you click on stop and you go out of here, you're going to have to hit the refresh button over here to actually see the state. So same deal, start it up, manage service states, get it started, and refresh. And then you'll be off to the races. Let me check, I got another question here, Mark and Aaron. We have multiple archive servers using a common Hsm server. Does the media type store? Oh, that's a good question. It looks for the Hsm-based service, I believe. It's a pretty uncommon situation, but yes, I believe it looks for the Hsm-based service. The media store service really just has to do with the properties of how it stores those on the folder level. It can be any type of store that it's connecting to. All right, what do you do when you move all archive data from one store to another, and there are items left in the old file structure? Well, this is something we should never do. This is from Mark Hill. The Hsm store, even though it's on the surface, it's a file level series of folders. One thing that it needs to be is a complete system. It's heuristic, so it has to be complete. You should never actually take media data or archive data out of inside the Hsm folder and move it to another Hsm folder. You always want to move the Hsm as a whole, like a database. You don't want to go into a database and start moving tables from one place to another. That would be a mistake. So whenever you're making a new Hsm store, especially moving an old Hsm store, you want to make sure that you've got both independently running when you start a new one, or you've moved the entire thing from one place to another. Don't change anything within the Hsm file structure. Yeah, so Patrick, what I said was when you're moving it, you don't want to have it obviously archiving new stuff into that Hsm. So you can stop the services in Enterprise Manager happily and make sure those are stopped. But if you want to be absolutely sure, like someone mentioned earlier, that somebody can actually go in, if you have the Outlook add-in, they have the ability, they can do manual archiving themselves. That's outside the archive job. You can go into services here and shut down this direct archive service, which will stop all archiving completely. Without the direct archive service, it can't actually go in and do the archiving. So, and it'll still allow people to retrieve, be able to run through all of that. All right. So we've hit our 11:30 mark. I'm going to wrap this up. I hope this was useful for you guys. It's going to be up online in the next little while. It'll be on our knowledge base and our website. And if you have any other questions, you know where we are, metalogix.com/support. And we're always happy to answer anything you guys might throw at us to the best of our ability. I hope everyone has a good day. We'll talk to you all later.